if you want.
I listened to some of your music last night.
Did you really?
Yeah. So
Did you like it?
yeah, I enjoyed it. It got me. It got me. I wish I remember the name of the song, but it got me into a Jimmy Buffett mood. It was a let's rock and roll. Are we gonna rock and roll?
Oh, rock and roll, rocking all night.
Yeah, it was
Kind
rock.
of like a Beach Boy sound. To
Yes.
It? Okay. It's very interesting that you brought up Jimmy Buffett
Yeah.
because the song was written from my perspective. If I walked into a room and there was Jimmy Buffett and the Beach Boys writing a song, what would they be writing?
Well, then you hit the nail on the head.
And my dream, because, everyone wants Jimmy Buffett to cut their song.
Yeah.
And I was working the traps to figure out how do I get this song to Jimmy Buffett, and he passed away.
Oh crap.
And so, but that was the whole mindset on what if I walked into a room and I know they were all buddies.
Yeah.
What would they be writing about? And that's what I came up with.
Well, that was the first song I listened to of yours. But for those that don't know, today it's a beautiful kind of cold February day. And we're with Brian Strange that owns Don Strange Catering, a catering company that has been around for 70 years that his father started years ago. And we're going to kind of undress, not really, but undress Brian Strange, the catering business, what it's taken to get through and do that and run that company successfully. For those that don't know, on my perception and what I've seen of Don Strange Catering is just all fantastic. When you go to an event, if there's a wedding, a big funeral, or a party, and Don Strange is catering, oftentimes on the side you'll hear, "Oh, Don Strange is catering." And so welcome, Brian Strange. I'm glad to have you here on Business Under Fire, and let's get busy.
All right. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's actually what people don't realize is my grandparents started the business.
Right.
And my dad took it to the next several levels through the 60s and 70s. And then that's when I came along in 66. And, it's catering and event production has been my life for most of my life. That's what I've known.
If they started this thing 70 years ago and it was your grandfather.
1952, my grandparents borrowed $10,000 from my grandmother's parents to start a grocery store on Bandera Road in Quill in San Antonio, and gas station grocery store. Then they started cooking barbecue. Then the steakhouse next door to them, the owner died. They bought that piece of property. They learned real quick they weren't restaurateurs. They turned it into a multi-room venue. So in call it late 50s, early 60s, Strange's Party House on Bandera Road was the first place other than a country club or a hotel where you could have your private party.
And it was named the Strangest Party House.
Strange's Party House.
Oh, Strangest Party House.
And so about that time, if you're not real familiar with San Antonio, the St. Mary's University was coming online, and our medical community over at the medical center was coming in. So you had a lot of people moving into San Antonio that were very knowledgeable about entertaining, a lot of doctors and such. And my dad befriended them, and they would have their events there. And then over time, they got these crazy ideas going, hey, would you come to our house to cater a party? Would you come to our offices? And then that's when we became a totally off-premise catering and event production company.
That question right there that you have, I'm in the restaurant business, and we've got 4 restaurants and some coffee shops. And so that question right there, will you come to our location and cook for us, is like oh, crap.
Right. No, it's all we've ever known. We don't know what it's like for people to come to our place and sell them something. So the restaurant and catering world, they look similar.
Oh, yeah.
But they operate totally different.
They are completely different. And I was lucky enough to have you show me y'all's headquarters, which is at the that's the original location still.
That's the original property. The building is a bit newer. We had built that property like 92.
And so for a restaurant guy to go into a catering guy's home base, I got to show Brian my restaurants up in Lubbock last weekend, and then he showed me his place, and it's completely different. I think we have all the same things in common. We've got utensils, dishwashers,
Right. You got people,
everything in common, but it's completely different on execution.
exactly,
Night and day.
right.
And so I know what your dish pit looks like. The clothes y'all wear, but everything in the way that you guys perform is completely different.
And it's all I've ever known. So we don't think anything about loading up a truck. Our refrigerated trucks have the food in it, and we might drive 300-400 miles. We go to Lubbock. We've been to Lubbock numerous times. And so I always tell people when they say, can you cater our party in wherever? And my answer is, if we can get a truck there, we can cater your event.
Man.
And that's just the way we roll.
I'm interested in going to see how you guys execute on this catering, because you were describing what it was like, but give us a rundown on a typical day that you guys cater an event. I'm guessing it starts days ahead, but what does that look like?
So typically, if we're going to cater a wedding, and it doesn't really matter what size, we typically do we do a lot of marquee weddings, which are have a lot of moving parts. They might have tenting, they might have entertainment, our food, our service. They might be in a real remote location, or they might be downtown San Antonio, or where have you. Those conversations typically start a year out. So right now we're getting a lot of calls for weddings that will start in October, and then some for next year. Corporate stuff that we do a lot of. San Antonio has a great convention and corporate inbound travel world, and those conversations are 90 days to 6 months out. Usually you're dealing with professional event planners, and they're giving you the heads up. Some of these we worked with. We don't see them for 5 years, but they said, hey, we were with you last time 5 years ago. We want to kind of do the same thing. And that's where our 72, 73 years of service comes in, because a lot of these are second and third and fourth generation companies that we're still doing business with today.
I was thinking about that too, because you guys are not operating. I mean, you have events almost every day, but what does the your employees, how long have some of those guys been there?
So I have two people on my team that have been with us for 35 years plus. I think they would appreciate me telling that, so it doesn't age them.
Yeah.
But I tell everyone that comes to work for us, you're going to be here for about 6 years, or 6 months, or 6 weeks to about 60 years. There's not a lot of in between. I've been blessed to have an incredible team, and our business isn't for everybody. It's hard, but the fun part is it's always changing and it's always interesting. One day it might be for a local family having a birthday party or retirement, or we might have dignitaries, politicians, movie stars. You never know who's calling. One day we were doing an event down at the Alamo for a small luncheon. It was for the Duke and Duchess of Spain. That was about 2 weeks out. The coolest thing was, I tell people I don't really know what my day holds or my week holds. Mm-hmm. We have an idea. We can do some projecting. And they said, hey, there's an extra spot at the table. Would you like to have lunch with the Duke and Duchess of Spain? I'm like, sure. Thankfully, I had dressed for the day, so I was dressed appropriately. But I had one of the most interesting lunches at the Alamo grounds with some very wonderful people. And I was like, well, that turned out to be a pretty good day.
That doesn't happen every day. And that's not the only high political figure you guys have catered for. You were telling me that I don't know if y'all have been to the White House or cater for presidents. Tell us about that.
So I believe 1986, we did a campaign party for George H. Bush at our ranch that we had as a venue. And it was an incredible weekend. I went to Hardin Simmons University in Abilene, Texas. So that weekend just happened to be, we were going to do a party Friday night. No, we're going to do a party Saturday night for George H. Bush at our ranch. They were also filming a major motion picture in San Antonio called Lost Angels. It starred Donald Sutherland, Adam Horowitz, and Amy Locane. And my parents' house had been picked as one of the sites, and they were going to crash a brand new Chrysler LeBaron convertible into our pool. So I said, hey, this weekend might be pretty fun for you guys to come down and hang out with me because they're going to crash a car in my parents' pool on Friday night. And then Saturday night, we have this campaign party for George H. Bush, who's running for president. And so that happened. And I can tell you this, the Bushes were true to their word. They had a blast. It was very successful. And they said, your food is so great, and we would like to have you to the White House if I'm elected. Well, he wins, and 2 years later, my dad got a call from the White House and said, "Come on up," and we actually did the Diplomatic Corps barbecue and the Congressional barbecue on the south lawns of the White House, back to back.
How in the world did the logistics work on that?
So, again, if you can get a truck there, and then we used some local help. There was a lot of logistics, and we took our entire staff from San Antonio, and you get your produce, you get some stuff, but at the end of the day, when you're working at the White House, there's a lot of security you're having to deal with. So we've gotten used to working with Secret Service and all that kind of stuff. So you put an 18-wheeler on the road for a couple days out, and you get up to Washington, D.C., and then everyone arrives, and you set it up and you knock it out.
Everybody's going through security. Is food checked somehow? Or?
I don't remember it. I'm sure it was. And that we had our protocols. We had a field kitchen on the grounds. We didn't actually get to we could use the White House kitchen if we needed water or stuff like that. But it was one thing that we've done all of our lives is we can set up a fully functional kitchen in the middle of a pasture with water and sanitation and the refrigeration. Everything's proper.
That's one thing that you were telling me that really stuck with me is that when you guys go set up to, I don't know if you call it cater event or service an event, but go to an event, you guys cook everything there on site. So your kitchen is a prep kitchen. You haul everything there, and then you have all your cooks, your barbecue pits, your grill. And then tell me how just your chicken is made at an event.
So we like to take the concept from pan to plate. And then logistically, you're going to back that up. So, and we want our food fresh and grilled. We want people to smell the smoke and aroma when they come to the event. That's part of my dad's teaching and learning, is that when they walk into that event, you want them to see something interesting. You want them to smell something interesting. So you're having some action going on. We might be cooking that food right in front of you. And man, it's fresh and good. And someone's offering you a margarita or a long neck beer or something to eat. So if we have to grill chicken breast, tenderloins, one of our signature items is our grilled white wing, which we created for Prince Rainier back in 1982, 83.
White wing dove?
Well, it was done. Prince Rainier came out to the YO Ranch, and they wanted a Southwest flavored hors d'oeuvre, hot hors d'oeuvre for a luncheon. And the YO Ranch has wonderful game, and so we used white wing dove on that event. It became so popular, and you can't buy dove commercially, so we switched to chicken, but we kept the name grilled white wings,
Oh,
and it's still today. When you walk into an event and you see grilled white wings coming out, you know you're at a Don Strange event.
mhm.
And so those are cooked minutes before you eat them.
Are those rolled in bacon with a jalapeno?
So it's a piece of bacon, it's some chicken, some Monterey Jack cheese, a pickled jalapeno, and it's rolled and with a corn stick through it. Then it's marinated in our secret marinade, which is very simple, but it's a secret. And they're frozen. So by the time they get out to the event in a refrigerator truck, they've slacked out, and you put them on the grill, and voila.
Man, those are so good. That's one of the tricks that I didn't know y'all had that as a signature thing, but that's one of the tricks I use running down to the ranch when I want dove, but I can't. So I'll just quarter up chicken
I
breast.
tell you, they're really good. You can buy quail commercially. So we have a lot of clients that know our products, and they'll say, "Hey, we like to substitute chicken for quail." So we'll do that occasionally as well.
Yeah, it sounds delicious. What does an ideal going into the business aspect of your catering business? What does an ideal event look like for you with respect to is it a number of attendees? Do y'all like the 200 person parties, the 500? What is an ideal event where you go in? You might get some of the floral work on it, but what does that look like to you guys?
So ideally, we took an average. What's our average size event? And when you break it all down, it's about 150 to 200 people. Because, for example, Friday night for Valentine's Day, we're doing a party for 6. The smallest we've ever done is 2.
So y'all are doing a party for six people.
6 people, seated and served, beautiful. It'll be at the Alamo. It'll be a beautiful setting. And then the largest we've ever done is 33,000 people in Dallas at City Hall in a 4.5 hour period. So we like the 250 to 500 in downtown San Antonio. People from all over the world come in, and we kind of show them a little bit of authentic Texas food. But we'll do anything. We're working on one right now for 6,000 people in May. But the part that's most important is your team. We have an incredible team, and we'll do several events on a night. And you might have a very formal wedding reception going on, and you might have a little bit more casual Texas party going at someone's ranch, and then you might be down at a venue downtown San Antonio where you're giving them a Tex-Mex experience. It runs the gamut, and that's what we do, and that's what we've been doing for 72 years.
So one day the waiter is a Mexican guy. The next day he's a cowboy.
Or you might be dressed in a beef eater outfit cutting tenderloin. You go from Guerra Vera to black tie so it's very we morph into whatever we need to morph into.
Are they talented enough to change accents?
Well, I can tell you it's interesting how all of our staff, if you read like we were talking about the other day, if you opened up Catering 101, we don't do anything like that. Everyone in our group can drive a truck. They know how to cook. They know how to bartend. They know a certain level of service that we expect. Now, the interesting part is they all kind of gravitate to what they enjoy doing.
Naturally.
And so you have that, but that's the whole key to running and never having to say, "Oh, we don't know how to do that," is because everyone has their niche, but then they have a broad sense of service.
Being able to adjust on the fly. I think your website has something that says catering, the term to cater means, and then it goes on from there. But that's one thing I tell people on the restaurant, and you and I are in the hospitality business.
Right.
And that means to host, guest. Right. And it's just like when Don Strange comes into an event, y'all are hosting guests at these people's venue or a venue that they pick, but y'all make these people feel like home. And not only with the food that y'all produce, but just the entire atmosphere makes these event spaces really feel like a personal touch, the ones that I've been to.
I'm in an executive group, and we meet once a month. And one day we had a speaker, and they said, "Oh, you got to have an elevator pitch. What's your elevator pitch?" And I can't say, "Well, we're in the off-premise catering business, and we do this." I mean, blah blah blah. That's boring. You got what 10, 15 seconds to tell somebody tell them something that's compelling that they'd want to know more. And I came up with the line, "We help people celebrate." And everyone goes, "Well, I want to celebrate." And I'm like, "Well, how do you want to do it?" And that's where our planning comes in. That's where, what is that client looking for? Because we want to make sure we hit their mark, not so much our mark. And that's the mindset. We're very customer centric, and probably to a fault. And because we want, just like you were saying, we want everyone to feel comfortable, and you're gonna want for nothing.
Yeah. I think y'all do a good job at it. And it's wild that I met Brian through flying. I fly part-time for those that don't know. And he went on a trip or two, and I've been his pilot, running him around to a few places. But it's interesting that your business, so it's not just when you build a business, the brand is the business. So anybody can sell a t-shirt or buy a t-shirt for $5, but the Nike brand commands that it brings $70 for a nice shirt. And you guys, from my perspective, every time I've been to an event that is a Don Strange event, I have known that it was a Don Strange event without knowing it. And
That's
so,
pretty cool.
and that's how good of a job you have done without me even recognizing, that it was that.
Right. We were always taught by my dad that you're as good as your last event. So every event needs to be perfect, spot on. And it's a brand that we're very proud of. And so going back to my grandparents started it. My dad got the bug, and he was one of those guys that was a visionary that people would think he was nuts, because he would see way out in the future. And they're like, "Oh, that's not going to work." Well, he would make it work. And his whole mindset was, if you can think it, you can do it. It may take you some time to figure it out. So we are blessed with an incredible brand and a legacy. And that's what we've been doing for the last, I'm the third generation. My dad passed away in 2009. So it's there's a lot of responsibility with that.
You've told me a couple of stories, and I guess I'll just put it out there. I said, "Hey, I'm going to have my buddy Brian on the podcast," and somebody says, "Oh, we want to hear from the owner that started it." And immediately when he said that, I was pissed off for Brian. And the reason why is because he's been telling me stories of catering. And one of the first stories that you told me is, I was 8 years old coming home at 2 a.m. or 9 years old from an event.
Yeah, I mean, well, I wasn't 8 or 9. I was in 8th grade.
Oh,
So I was 11.
oh, close enough.
Right. So it's one of those things where when you grow up in a family business, and I wanted to spend time with my dad. My dad said, "We're going to Houston this weekend for a big whatever." We did some great, wonderful parties down in Galveston. And, I think my mom kind of figured out, hey, if you're going to go work with your dad this weekend, I get a break, and you're going to be okay, and you're going to learn.
We get some free labor.
Right.
But this is all you've known.
So that's all I've ever done. I mean, I had some other jobs when I was in high school and college. When I graduated from college, I wanted to be a rock and roll promoter. I thought I really enjoy music, and I thought that would be a fun occupation. And my dad set me up with a guy up in Dallas to work for a year to learn how to be a promoter, and he was very, very successful. And I learned about 8 months in that maybe this rock and roll entertainment promoting is not my forte, and that's when I came back to the business.
There's a whole nother aspect to the music industry that I've dabbled in because we have bars that have live music.
Right.
So we've had, Kevin Fowler, Coetzel, Parker McCollum, John Wolfe, all the Texas country guys
Right.
that you can have. And from my point of view on that is it's just always a huge gamble. And
Right.
and we have nights that we brought 2,000 people to Marion, Texas, and Chief Crane's like, Tommy, what are you doing?
Right.
And then it was Coetzel, so he's throwing a huge party. And but then we've also had big name guys that you would think were gonna do well, and it just bombs out.
No, this guy, he had done back in the '60s all the Motown acts on the Eastern Seaboard. I mean, his paper bills were just. I mean, you would have Dionne Warwick, and the opening act was Neil Diamond. I mean, it was just cool, and he ended up managing John McEnroe in the exhibition part of it, and he and John created what is known as the corporate sponsorship world. They defined what the title sponsor is, the presenting sponsor, and created that whole industry and made gazillions on it. When I arrived, he was in professional wrestling. He was doing NWA, and basically got into the sponsorship world and not so much worrying about who was going to come to the show, but through the sponsorships created all the media and all the promotion, and people would fill it up and off you went. So to your point, yes, you can think you have a sure thing,
Yeah.
and it's not. And
No.
and again, it's extremely hard work because you got to tell everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought that knowledge to our business. We've done some shows over the years. I booked a lot of national acts for the event, so we understand who to call. What's a fair price? Are they gonna work well with our client? Because they want the Hollywood experience too.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned a lot, but the plan was to come back and work for my dad. And so I started, I think officially my job started in 1989 in August.
And then what did that look like for you? What position did he throw you into?
So I was always a sales marketing type guy. I created this cook-off we did at the ranch at the time. And then I did that for a while. Then our chef of 25 years, I guess it was early 2000s, he decided he was going to leave and go do his own thing. And he gave notice. He did it right. But we'd never really he'd kind of been there for 25 years, so you didn't have to worry about
Nothing.
from the ordering and the organization and the production of getting the food out. My brother at the time was working in the business as well, and he says, hey, I'm going on a 2-week trip, so while I'm gone, you might want to think about hiring a chef. And I'm like, well, how do I hire a chef? So what ended up happening was I realized I had an incredible team that knew exactly how to do all this stuff. If I could just keep them organized and working down the road, well, I'd figured it out. So I actually did that for about 8 years. And so that puts us towards 2007, 2008. I'm still doing a lot of the back of the house stuff. And my dad tells me one day how sick he is. He's not doing well, but he has about 5 years. And I'm like, okay, we can do 5 years. Well, he actually died in 8 months.
Oh.
So I always say God has a plan for you, and I understood how we sold events and how important our clients were to us. I learned how the back of our house runs. I never really got to the accounting department because that wasn't my forte. But he passes on, and at least I had a clue on how to run it. And that's when my journey started in November of 2009.
And then you had brothers.
So I have 2 brothers. We were all in the business. one had left to go do home health care, and but we inherited the business. So you have three brothers, and and you know, it's so cyclical in our world. And if you '09 was the last part of the financial crisis,
Right.
so a lot of our customers had changed or gone away, and we were having to reinvent ourselves a little bit, and things were dicey.
I touched on that the other day with a lady because in '08 I was 28 and I was landscaping and mowing grass, and I think I was just too young and dumb to watch the news and realize what was going on, because we were hustling and just somehow we went and got through it. And same thing with her. She was in the real estate market and she was hustling. And then so here you have this business with employees. You're relatively young, and
But you don't know what's going on. You hear this financial crisis, but you don't know how that's going to affect your customers. And your customers are saying, "We would love to have an event with you." I mean, actually, if you take 9/11, that crushed our business for a couple years. Then you have '08, '09. It didn't. I wouldn't say it crushed it, but you had to pivot a little bit because some people, your real estate people, your banks and stuff, they weren't doing so good. And if they did stuff, they did it much smaller and simpler. So you get out of that. My dad dies, and you're starting to roll down the road. And again, like I was telling you earlier, the third generation of a family-owned business, that third generation is a tough one to get through, and most fail. Well, I may not be the smartest guy in the world, but I have tenacity and I have optimism, and I wasn't going to be that statistic.
yeah.
So that was the mindset. But I thought I knew how to run a business. Again, God puts people in your life. I'm a Rotarian here in San Antonio, and I didn't realize all these boards existed. And so my dad dies. I start getting calls from, "Hey, you want to join our executive board?" Well, I've been on nonprofit boards. I didn't know you had to pay to be on a board. And I would tell them, "No, I'm good. I need to figure out what I'm doing." And one day, this guy named Charles Marino, he's a Vistage chair here in San Antonio, calls me up and says, "Do you want to join Vistage?" And I said, "What's Vistage?" He goes, "Well, it's an executive board where it's all owners of different companies, different industries, and we meet for one day a month, and then you get 2 hours of one-to-one with me." And I said, "Yeah, I don't know. You're the third guy that's called me in the last 2 weeks to pitch this. It's expensive." And he said, "John Tate said I should see you." And I'm like, "Oh." John Tate is a friend of mine in Rotary. He's a very prominent attorney here in San Antonio. And I said, "Well, if John Tate says I should meet with you, then I'll meet with you, but only because John Tate said." And so he came, and I joined Vistage, and basically that sent me on a journey to grow my business, to get the metrics right, the KPIs, and all that kind of fun, all those acronyms. And so that's been 15 years since that. So I wasn't I made it through the first year, then I got to the seventh year, and then I bought everyone out soon after that, and we're 15 years into this journey.
I find it interesting a lot of times. I go to a business coach in Nashville, guy named Coach Michael Burt. Shout out, Mr. Michael Burt. But I find it interesting that if you have a problem, your son has a problem, daughter has a problem in athletics, or they have a problem in academics, or they want to learn something, even to play a musical instrument, they go to a coach.
Right.
To get better, to learn, to keep, doing these processes over and over until they can play that song if it's a musical instrument. But then we talk to people in business, and these guys have done good, because I think even when you started, y'all were doing well. I have buddies that are doing well. And but then they there's a point at which you hit a ceiling at what you can do on your own. And so I just don't understand why all of these people that do have good businesses or decent are so against a coach and or being in a group like you're being like
Or
you're in
you don't know that's really even
an option.
an option.
So with that point, I could sit here and do an entire episode on what I've done in the past year and a half since getting into a business program that helps expand my thinking. But what has Vistage done for you?
Well, we're still here. That's the first big step,
Which is gigantic.
which is huge. So you think, or my thought was, if you're in the catering business, no one understands the problems of a catering business.
Especially a restaurant guy.
Right. So what you hear is regardless of what industry you're in, it's the same problems: how to increase sales, how to control your cost, and make a better margin. That's bottom line.
And customer acquisition.
And customer acquisitions, what other services can you sell? How do you grow that footprint and make it better and make it more profitable? And that's how you're able to take care of your employees and keep them and create a great culture. And because at the end of the day, the CEO can't do it all by himself. And once you get out of that mindset that this is a team sport, not an individual sport, you once you learn how to engage your team and let them make big decisions. Now, we're all on the same page on what decisions are going to be made, but what you learn is that some people are smarter than you are.
Oh yeah.
And they can do it better, and they have better ideas. And so that's what I've learned.
You said to me the other day, you go, I learned that I just need to get out of some of their way.
Yeah.
And that's powerful because, people have their own talents. And you can be a talented person, but you're not a sharp Swiss Army knife on every blade. Like, you've got to let these people run.
Exactly. And so I have been blessed with people that have my best interest at heart, and they have the company's best interest at heart. And I'm not saying we're perfect, but we're striving for perfection.
We just did a deal yesterday where they went over for 3 hours how to build the perfect team. And the first line coming into the class was, that's a paradox, guys. There's no perfect team.
Right.
And you're always working and molding and trying to get this employee to grow or this. And then you've got interpersonal issues. Like, can we get that out of the way so we can make this event better and just get out of our way? But building a team just on its own is,
I got 50 some odd employees, and I count on them every single day. And they know that the decisions I make for the company benefit them, and the actions they do benefit me and benefit the company. So it's a constant motion, and but that's what Vistage has been, and that you can always be a whole lot better than you think you are. You're not nearly as good as you think you are.
That's one of the things that I really stress to people, and it still irks me on the coaching thing. Like, any person that has a problem that they want to get better at, their immediate answer is go to a coach. But if we're in business and you tell someone, like, I guess most of us entrepreneurs are hard-headed, right? So they're like, no, I don't need it.
You don't want to admit that you might need some help. Once you get over that hurdle, and then you talk to a guy that maybe you think is a lot better than you are, they're going, well, where do you go? Because I might need some help. And you're like thinking, he's already thinking he needs help. He's smarter than I am. Then you put that whole group in, and next thing you know, you don't have to take everything from everybody, but you start, that's interesting how they handled that problem. I don't know if that's how I would do it, but I know it's got to be handled. So how would you handle it? And in our group, we have hired CEOs, we have family-owned business CEOs that are their family and the owners, and then you have those are about the two. So it's interesting to listen from the perspective of a CEO who reports to a PE board,
Uh-huh.
and here is the
That's a
mission,
private equity
right,
board.
and here is our 5-year plan, and here's how they execute every single day because they have 5 years to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a little bit different mindset than a 70-year-old business now.
Mm-hmm.
That we're looking at the long game, but but I tell you what, their metrics are spot on, their planning is spot on, and their execution is spot on, or they don't have a job next week.
Yeah. It's interesting when they take human feelings out of their equation, and they might take some feelings, but they switch from business to personal.
Right.
And this is business. We have got to hit these metrics. I don't care about your feelings. We're professionals. We're going to act like professionals, and we're going to get this shit done.
Right.
And that is what it takes to grow and expand, and people's feelings get hurt. But this is a professional game that has livelihood at stake.
Right. And that's the hard part of taking the human emotion out of it, which we deal in human emotion. We're helping people celebrate. We want to bring them joy, but yet you got to go to your business mind and hit your marks. And we've learned when we hit our marks, the joy even gets bigger and better.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's not, my dad was he was an artist. He loved creating joy and making everyone happy. And we figured out how to make the money work. Now I wasn't as good as my dad, so I had to say, well, we got to make sure our marks are getting hit and we're bringing joy to everybody.
For sure. What's we go back to this. What you said, you were getting running, rocking, everything was good. 2017, 2018, 2019, things were going good, and then COVID happens.
Right.
What in the hell was that like?
So COVID was a really interesting year because
the events stopped.
The events stopped.
Dead in their tracks.
Now, if you go back to the statistics of a third-generation family-owned business where the patriarch dies, the 10-year mark, if you can make it 10 years, statistically, you're probably going to be okay. You're going to make it. Very hard to get to that first year, then the 7th year was your next milestone. So I had just borrowed a lot of money from a bank to buy my brothers out. Things were looking good. We were clicking on down the road, and 2020 was going to be a really good year for us. I mean, we had monster stuff booked. January, February are slower.
Because of weather.
Because of weather. You just came out of December, of Christmas stuff. But February was a record month. I'm not talking a record February month. I'm talking a record month historically for our company. And I'm like, wow, 2020 is coming along. And we started hearing about this virus thing coming around, but no one seemed to be too worried about it. We also manufacture a product called a grill partner. That's a alternative to a chafing dish. And we go to Vegas and we sell it to the other caterers in the United States. We've been doing that since 2010. And we're hearing about this virus thing, but we're going. We get up there March 10th. And we roll into the trade show floor, and about half the vendors that typically are there that we've gotten to know, they're not there. And we're like, wow, this is odd. And then about half the people that normally would come, our customers, they weren't there. And then the ones that were coming would go, hey, we were going to buy about 20 of these things from you, but we just had 10 events cancel. And I'm like, well, that's not good. Next thing you know, my phone starts blowing up from San Antonio going, hey, we just lost 4. We just lost 3. And I'm like, oh, goodness, this is a little bit more serious. So March 14th, I get back into town. I go into my office, and Diana Arias, who's my VP of Sales and Culinary Experience, she's been with the company longer than I have. She goes, what are we going to do? All these events are canceling.
Do y'all have deposits on these events?
We had a few deposits, and but you know, when you're 3-4 months out, they're not big. But we had a really good February. You got to remember that.
Thank God.
So we had some runway. She goes, what are we going to do? I said, you know, I'm going to need a minute to process this.
Yeah.
And so I go home, and I tell my wife that, hey, I'm going to be home. My workload's gotten a lot lighter. And
you need a new lawn guy.
Yeah. I don't know what we're going to do. So we started doing, you know, meal delivery, you know, and our clients supported us, but it wasn't a, that was just a way to let everyone know that, hey, we were still here. We could help you celebrate as much as you wanted to, or you could. But in San Antonio and in Texas, I think it was illegal to gather in any size. And when you're in the gathering business, that's a hard business. So 2020 was the worst year in the history of our company, where our sales were down 70%. I tell everyone it would have been worse than that had we not had such a great February. So I went from 50 employees down to 6. I would have to let them go 5 at a time.
What were the banks saying?
The bank that held my loan, they were very nice. They gave me they deferred my payments.
Yeah.
And we don't have a whole lot of debt, so that was. But I did have a mortgage payment to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So So what you learn real quick is, so I started asking every old person I could find, have you ever had to deal with anything like this before? You know, World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no, we've had stuff happen over the years, but nothing like this. I'm like, okay, because one thing that we've always been pretty good at is pivoting and trying to figure out, you don't quit. You have tenacity and you have optimism, and you just keep dancing.
You had to.
And so we were blessed. We got some PPP money that kind of hurt, but one person would say, oh, this is just a 3-week problem. And then one person would say, oh no, this is going to last a lot longer. Well, I kind of like the 3-week problem. I could wrap my brain around that. I could not wrap my brain around this is going to take a couple years, because we didn't have a couple years.
No.
That's not going to work.
Not with revenue is life.
And so then you're talking to big hotels, and you're calling your buddies down there going, what are y'all doing? And they're saying, well, we're dead. We have our maintenance guy here, and a couple managers come in and out, but there's no one down here. So I'm like, wow, this is like ghost town.
Mm-hmm.
So we make it through the summer. October, things get lifted where you can gather, because we had people wanting to have parties, not big ones, but business. And October, I guess they loosen up, and we actually made money in October.
Remember what that first party was like? When they lifted it?
Yeah. It was,
that was the best party of our life.
Oh yeah, no. So they were all good. But then you had the second round of COVID come through, and they shut it all back down.
Oh yeah.
So October was good. And then I call it like a Port Aransas wave. It sets up beautiful, and it just fizzles out.
I tell you what, you said Port Aransas, and I was right there with you. I had got, I owned one restaurant at the time. I had bought another restaurant Miguel's that I showed you. It was just an abandoned building, and got the loan to go ahead and build pre-COVID, just a few weeks before, and we go in and we're tearing stuff out and working, and I'm like, oh crap. And then the bank guys are like, I said, what do y'all want me to do? Our money is shut off. They said, you keep working.
Right.
Do not worry. We'll defer whatever. You keep working. And like you said, the grit and resilience that it takes to be your own boss, that's the kind of stuff. And you know what? That's where the real guys shine, because a lot of people threw in the towel, and you didn't throw in the towel. I didn't throw in the towel. We just kept working.
I didn't have a towel to throw in.
It was hard though.
It was hard, but looking back, I can always say, hey, no matter how hard and crazy this business world gets, because it's never just good all the time.
Never.
You can say, we made it through COVID. We can make it through anything.
I agree.
And so in the first quarter of 21, the bank said, hey, we've been very nice to you, but we're going to have to kind of turn the spigot back on. And, thank God. I could see our business was booking back up. We were working some really cool weddings and all sorts of stuff. I said, oh, that's fine. And so we picked up plenty of business. We picked up a huge contract to cater we fed 535 immigrant kids per day, 3 times a day, 7 days a week for 90 days.
Damn.
And that kind of righted our ship.
Mm-hmm.
We also learned a whole different industry. We had never heard about that industry of mass feedings, and they call it emergency catering, or where people go out and feed the firefighters for weeks at a time. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, we could explore some of that. This works. And so we learned a lot. Our ship so we went from, in 2020, the absolute worst time in our business, probably in our industry, to 21 being the best year we've ever had in our lives. And so it's the tenacity, it's the optimism. It's my business coach goes, you got 6 people. And he goes, you might want to think about cutting salaries. And I said, well, that I understand what you're saying, but I have people that are trying to book business, delivering their food on the way home, because everyone got a route. If you were at the office, you had a food route to deliver on your way home. And whatever else, it might drive a truck down the street. I said, I don't think I can ask much more from them and cut their pay. So I said, here's my ship. If we go down, they've all said, we'll go down with you. And we didn't go down.
Do you deal with people's paychecks on a daily basis, or who deals with that?
We pay weekly, and I have a bookkeeping department.
But do you hand people raises, or?
There's always I have department managers that say, hey, I think we should bump somebody up or what have you, and it's a discussion. I like to give them to let them make that call. I mean, there's discussions. Nothing just is willy-nilly. I
gave up on. I told my 2 partners 8-10 months ago. I said, I'm done dealing with people's money. Yeah. This is the manager, direct supervisor, manager, and y'all's conversation. Leave me out of it.
I do like being told, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Which are just respectful conversations. But it's like that's where some of the transparency comes in, and I think I take care of my people really well.
I like to be told we did this, and then I walked into the restaurant the other day, and the guy said, hey, man, appreciate you taking care of me and this person and blah, blah, blah. And really it was Daniel and Zamora, my 2 partners. Right. But it's just I've been dealing with people's money since I was 17 years old.
Right.
And I'm just tired of it.
Right.
So
But it's nice walking into Miguel's, and it's running like a machine.
Yeah.
It's nice and clean.
Yeah.
Everyone seems to be proud that they're working there. And at the beer house, is that how you say it?
Beer house.
Beer house. It's you can tell they're well-run machines when it's clean and friendly and efficient.
Yeah.
So that's tells your team, and you should give your team the ability to say, "Hey, I think Joe's doing a good job,
Yeah.
and he's ready for the next bump." And sometimes I'm most of the time, if it's a significant bump or a significant hire, they're like, "What do you think? What are you comfortable with?" I'm like, usually, what do you think's fair?
Mm-hmm.
Or what's it going to take to get them?
Yeah.
Because it's pretty competitive out there.
It is. It's a interesting. I mean, it's had the times have changed a lot in the past 5 years for sure, and especially when it comes to compensation and talents and what people, think they're worth, and then what it costs us to even go to dinner. You and I've had this conversation that, you said if you go to dinner and you with your wife and you go to dinner and drinks and it's a decent place, if you don't spend $100, you're like, something's not right. Like your business mind goes to, I'm not sure if they're making what they need to make.
Right.
And I mean, it's just the way it is.
And you may
these
not be
days.
able to afford to do it 3 times a week,
Yeah.
but you're trying to support them once, maybe 2 on a week type of deal. But we were looking at a steak the other night, and they said it was Angus, but they didn't have certified Angus. I'm like, well, the price point's not right. It was only $65 for a I forget. It was something. It wasn't certified Angus, but it was something Angus. And they go, "What do you mean? That's a good price?" I said, "Oh, I know it's a good price, but they want to make you think it was certified Angus, which should be about $95 to $100." And they're like, "Really?" I'm like, just knowing what you know, that they can't afford it. If they're selling certified Angus, they can't afford to sell $65 steaks, or they're not going to make any money.
This is almost certified Angus.
Right. It said kind of certified. No.
That'd be great.
It's what business becomes is your life, and then you work to try to get that family life balance, which is what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, when you said that, I've got a couple questions that I like to ask everybody, and one is, what is family life business? Is there such a thing as family life balance for an entrepreneur?
Well, so I guess when you're growing really fast, it's really hard to balance.
Mm-hmm.
But probably the trust factor in your team, and knowing that you don't have to be right there all the time. You need to be engaged and you need to be available, but having parameters that they don't need to be spelled out, just more of a respect. Like I still get calls at 10 o'clock at night, and I know that they're either really good calls or they're going to be a really bad call, but I definitely want that call at 10 o'clock at night. But everyone knows that if you don't need to call him at 10 o'clock, I'm still trying to come down and from the day and stuff. And then also spending more time with your family, my wife, and traveling. And my hobby is songwriting and playing music. I have a lot of friends that are hunters and fishermen and stuff. But I've done all that. That's just not what I'd rather go. I'd rather go to Nashville and see what's going on at Groom Guitars, or go cut a demo or something.
I love live music, and so when the business coach is in Nashville and I have to go there,
that's a pretty good trip.
It's so nice. And then I just stay downtown,
right?
So I can walk everywhere. I've got the restaurants that I like to go to. You go in, I don't drink, but I have one drink at every bar. If the music's good, I'll have 2. Topo Chico. This is a good non-alcoholic drink, by the way, for the catering. It's Topo Chico, orange juice, pineapple juice, and grenadine.
Oh, wow.
It tastes like a Shirley Temple. It is so good.
That does sound good.
And so I have 2 of those. Don't get much of a buzz off of it, but and then you just bounce around from bar to bar and listen. So I've been really enjoying that. And maybe I'm just thirsting for knowledge, like in business. If I want to hear just every corner of what people have to say about their business and how they did it. So
Well, I'm still doing it is my problem.
Yeah.
So that's and you're I guess from an entrepreneur, you're never there.
No, and never the goalpost always moves.
Always moves.
You'll never, if you say that I want to get to $100 million a year in revenue and you
Right.
get there, guess what? You're not happy.
Right.
And
Well, if we did 100, how do we do 125? So I mean, it's but that keeps you young and it keeps you hustling, engaged.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I would say. Oh, great, you closed that deal. What else you got working?
Yeah.
And they were telling me, could you just let it rest for a minute or two and let's celebrate that win?
Yeah.
And I said, I never realized I was that bad. So I mean, to have your team kind of call you out and say, look, we worked really hard to get that one closed.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just kind of enjoy it for just a minute, and then
Yeah.
we'll tell you what else we got working on.
Yeah.
But they don't know I'm worried about, okay, how's our house next week going to look? I'm thinking in numbers on, we're going to be okay now.
Yeah. What does it's one of my favorite questions is what does success look like to Brian?
Success looks like to me, well, I'll be married 33 years in November. I got 3 beautiful kids that are all settled. They're grown. My youngest is 26. I have 2 grandbabies. I would say that's pretty successful.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've continued a legacy and a legend in the catering and business, and we're evolving in that. So, I mean, if it all ended today, I think I've done a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's mindset was, it was interesting. He goes, I think I've made it as good as I can. Y'all need to make it better. So I'd always want someone I would always want to have the attitude that I'm not the best, and maybe someone else is better than me, and you learn how to be better yourself. But it's I I'm pretty happy where I am, and I can't say I'm done, and I'm not resting on my laurels. But I was able to sit here today with you for a couple hours and not have to worry about the phone blowing up or what have you going on.
That is a successful entrepreneur, especially when you've grown a business from, even taking it over or starting from nothing. My phone used to ring over 100 times a day.
Yeah.
And hundreds of text messages. But I think one of the things I've come up on this conversation with you is first, congratulations for carrying this catering business on for the 3rd generation. But you have built a brand and a legacy. Your dad built it or grandpa, but you've carried it on, and it got ingrained into my mind, like we talked about earlier, without even mentally knowing it. And that speaks volumes about what you've done.
Well, that's awesome. And I really appreciate you. And that's what and we never set out to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we just want to help people celebrate. And how do you want to celebrate? And we're going to work really hard to make sure you're happy. And it's it's more of a mindset than it is and once you do it long enough, it gets ingrained with you. I'm more worried about how you're doing today as opposed to, I don't want to be nervous or whatever. I want to make sure you're not nervous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got this taken care of back here. You go do your thing.
Right.
Well, maybe one day I'll get to go watch. Part of the problem with meeting entrepreneurs like you is that immediately after we got back this weekend, I called a couple of my guys in the restaurant and I said, guys, we're missing out on a lot of business right now. So I need to know, I asked the GM, who can we call that can go? I called a hit list of people that we want to go talk to start get caterings.
Right.
So already by Monday, we landed Sunday, I guess. On Sunday night, I had already been in discussions and we already have a guy going all over Lubbock with our hit list on
cool.
event centers,
Right.
event planners, wedding stuff, because we're going to go after them on the catering stuff. So Maybe you'll let me go to one of your events to watch how it works.
We can do catering 101.
So anyway, but I appreciate your time. It's been great. I really appreciate you coming and doing this with me. Where can the listeners find all y'all's information?
So you go to donstrange.com. That's our home website. If you're interested in the Grill Partner, which is, again, another product that we manufacture for the industry, but if you're a cooking enthusiast at home, you go to grillpartner.com. It's Pardner. And then if you like my music, or if you want to hear my music, you can go to Spotify. It's under Brian Strange & the Strange Brothers, because my boys played with me for 10 years, from 4 to 14.
I saw the picture. It's Austin, right? What was your son's name in Lubbock?
Austin. Well, Austin, and then there's Jake, but they both went to Tech.
Well, one of them was playing the harmonica in the picture.
Austin and Jake. Austin played harmonica. And Jake played mandolin. And so, since you spend time in Nashville, you'll appreciate this. We've actually played the Bluebird Cafe twice.
Nice.
And they did it at age 8 and 10. And so, but they finally, when they got to, I guess, almost to high school, they said, we'd opened up for all the Red Dirt people and been to Nashville, played the Bluebird. They had actually played on, they'd done some recording, and they finally said, we just want to be normal kids and play sports. And so now Austin is in the software business. He bridges hospitals with the home health care and hospice world. And Jake is here in San Antonio with SWBC, and he sells PEOs. So they're professionals, but they still have their chops and they still can play.
Are you still playing?
I still play. I haven't played live, and after COVID, things kind of. I would love to play live again. My daughter, My daughter, who never really embraced the musical world, her and her husband live up in Dallas, and have 2 kids, Scarlett and Rhodes, which I think those are cool names.
Yeah, it is. I've never heard of a girl named Rhodes. I like it.
No, Scarlett is Rhodes' boy.
Oh, well, you never know these days.
Right.
But that's an awesome name. I've never heard of it. Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate your time. This is Business Under Fire with Tommy Bonner. And after, if you guys have any entrepreneurs that you think would like to come on our show, we're looking for some. We've got about 15 or 20 awesome ones lined up, but we could use some more. One of the benefits of coming on the show, if it's on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, our favorite place, Burnt Bean, is open. So Brian and I are headed to beautiful Seguin to go eat at Burnt Bean.
So you go see Ernest.
Yeah, go see Ernest and David and one of my buddy, Blake Bertling over there. So,
all right, cool.
All right, let's go.
All right, thanks.